By following these guidelines and taking a little pause before you post something, you're not just protecting your patients, you're also safeguarding your reputation, your license, and your career. As medical providers, we are held to a higher stature in the community, and the advice, comments, and posts that we make are going to be held to a different standard than others. Think about. Welcome to The PA is In, the show created by PAs for PAs, where codependency with your supervising physician is a thing of the past, optimal team practice is the future, and physician associate has taken the place of physician assistant as the professional title of choice. I'm Tracy Bingaman, and I'm obsessed with redefining what success as a PA looks like and what it feels like. Here you'll find the mindset shifts, systems, and processes I use to escape healthcare burnout and integrate my work into my life. Work-life balance is a myth, and an integrated life where you thrive professionally, not a balancing act, is the goal here. My mission is to help you to grow into a unicorn PA who loves their job, has abundant energy, time to spare, and work-optional financial freedom. The PA is in. Welcome to The PA is In, where we dive into the essentials to keep your career thriving and in tune with today's ever-evolving digital landscape. As providers, many of us are more active online than ever. On platforms like LinkedIn, if you're an old lady like me, Facebook, Instagram, or niche platforms like Sermo, where people are in community with other providers. Whether for professional networking, sharing knowledge, or simply connecting with others in community. But with this expanded presence online, it's crucial to remember that as healthcare professionals, we're held to a higher standard when it comes to things like privacy and compliance. The topic of internet safety and HIPAA compliance isn't always thrilling, but staying informed on it is essential, especially if you're sharing patient-related stories, content, experiences, or even simple case updates. HIPAA violations can be costly, both financially and professionally, to your reputation, and sometimes what we think is safe actually isn't. Today, we're going to tackle what makes an online post HIPAA compliant. Spoiler alert, saying posted with patient permission or posted with parent permission is not enough. We're going to give you a toolkit to ensure your digital presence is both engaging and safe. I'm going to walk through some questions to ask yourself before you click post or comment on that thing that you're considering putting out there on the internet. Pretty much every day, I see posts online that make me cringe or flinch and feel concerned about liability and privacy and compliance in places like these forums or these groups online. Whether it's posting photos, sharing specific details about patients or encounters, or even revealing specific identifying details about things like where your kids go to school, online safety is no joke. It is my hope that this episode comes across as a friend telling a friend, hey, here's a friendly reminder that we don't always get this right, but to be thinking of this. This topic of internet safety has been a hot one in our household as we navigate modern parenting and introducing our littles to the internet, even when they're online for homework and schoolwork. And so those conversations have inspired me to say, hey, there is actually a lot of crossover when it comes to things like professionalism and protecting your license and making sure that your patients are privacy protected in your posts online. So let's explore the top ways to protect yourself, your patients, and your practice online. You'll walk away from this episode with practical tips to keep your digital interactions rewarding, fun, and most importantly, HIPAA compliant. I'm going to keep this relatively short and sweet because I believe in your heart of hearts, you know what is and isn't appropriate to post online. So without further ado, here we go. All right, I'm going to start us off with 5 key points on internet safety and HIPAA compliance for providers in general, but also give some examples on how this applies to online posts and interactions. Yes, I know that your workplace has those HIPAA e-learnings. I know that you took that quiz. I know that you know what HIPAA is, but here is just a little reminder and how it applies to online presence, content, and posting. First up, know what counts as PHI or protected health information. PHI is not just names, but also any details that could directly or indirectly reveal a patient's identity, like their age, sex, location, specific conditions. Even if a post seems generic, it still might contain identifiable information. So when you're looking at something that you're considering posting, ask yourself, could someone who knows of me and where I work and the types of patients that I see in terms of specialty or age take this story and potentially figure out who I was taking care of? Number two, understand consent limitations. This is a big one in some of these clinical discussions or online forums where people are saying, hey, I have this patient and I'm wondering what to do with it. I think that this can be someplace that you can get answers, honestly, depending on the quality of the group and the members. Sometimes the comments are just totally outrageous. But if you have a community of people that you feel comfortable posting and asking a question about a specific type of patient or a challenge that you're facing or looking for specific resources, that's an okay use of the internet. But if there is a photo, if there are specific details about the patient, even if a patient or their family member or their parent gives you verbal permission to share a story or a photo, that alone doesn't mean that you're compliant with HIPAA. Always get documented written consent that specifics can be shared. What specifics can be shared? Photos or details about a case study and how it will be used. But try to avoid direct patient references. Definitely exclude names if that's not something that you got permission to share. I don't see people sharing names so much, but oftentimes photos, very specific case studies. I saw this patient today in my rheumatology clinic in rural Pennsylvania. It is a 48-year-old female. She has this specific history of formerly living in this place. And it's not that the clinical details are going to identify this person, but oftentimes if someone knows about you and where you work, they could just potentially figure it out. And saying posted with permission is not going to keep you safe if someone actually reports a HIPAA violation. I don't have the data up here, but remember that HIPAA violations have significant fines and jail time. I wish I had just taken my HIPAA training at work because I feel like those are numbers that tend to stick in my brain, but we must be due to do it soon because I can't remember the specifics of the penalties. But know that this is something that you don't want to deal with when it comes to licensure and liability and also your personal and professional reputation. Number three, avoid sharing specific dates or locations. Including details like when or where a case took place can sometimes be enough to identify a patient, especially if you are in a smaller community or if you are a more specialized clinician. Avoid posting things like timestamps or geographic identifiers when discussing patient related content online. And if you can, in terms of you want to share something for education purposes, you want to share something that was interesting or unique or rare, don't necessarily post it the day of. Or if you are posting it the day of, don't say that it was today in clinic. So saying specifics like today in clinic at Allentown in general surgery, I saw my post-op appy who was done 10 days ago. And this little adorable 8-year-old boy is back to playing soccer. That's a little aggressive of a post-op recovery, but when you define the location, the timing, the date, the age, the sex of the patient, all of those identifiers make it easier to narrow down who the patient was, when the patient had surgery. And it could be a friend of a friend who knew someone. You know, the internet is a weird place where connections are sort of loose, but also ever present. Just don't want people to be able to narrow down who you're talking about in terms of your community and patients that you're taking care of. As PAs, we know how to provide excellent care to our patients, but inevitably, there are work-related issues that leave us, well, stumped. It could be a question about reimbursement or malpractice insurance or even renegotiating your contract. Or you might be looking for tips on having more effective conversations with patients and colleagues. Or maybe you want to move up in your career, but you're not sure if that means starting a new role, taking on a leadership position, or changing specialties. For everything I just mentioned, AAPA's Career Central has you covered. With more than 200 resources and a searchable database, you can find anything you need in minutes. Solve your next career challenge at aapa.org/career central. Number 4, limit what you post to generalized educational, not personal details. So if you're sharing a case study or something that you experienced online, keep it generalized, focusing on educational takeaways without unique personal details. Like if I'm going to tell you about a patient that I saw back on urology, I could tell you that it was inpatient, that it was when I was rounding, that it was a post-call day, those things don't narrow it down. But if I say, this patient was from up north, which is something that people say in my area about a specific geographic region. And he was in his mid 70s and his wife was a school principal. All of this is made up, by the way. But if I start to give specific personal details about the patient, it just becomes easier to narrow it down. Whereas just saying like 78-year-old male status post prostatectomy post op day 1, that doesn't really tell you who it was or what hospital I was rounding at or when I saw this patient. And if you're doing this for educational purposes, as much as you can while maintaining the integrity of the case, you can change the details. You can use something that they call like composite cases, where you're using multiple patients or broad overviews, where you're talking about post op prostatectomy patients as opposed to this specific post op prostatectomy patient. And number 5, regularly audit your social media for compliance risks. Audit sounds very formal, but just take a look at your posts and read things that you're commenting on. And are your privacy settings something that you would feel comfortable with? I didn't really get, as a part of this episode, too much into the details of internet safety in terms of making it so that it's hard for patients to find you online. I have not personally had this experience, but I have friends and colleagues who have said that they have had patients who have searched them out online and sent them, personal messages or requests or said, "Hey, I have this specific medical problem and I'm wondering who you would recommend." Sometimes with more or less personal or medical details. It's important to know that messaging on Instagram, messaging on Facebook, messaging on any platform other than those that are specifically HIPAA compliant through work and through secure EMR platforms are not HIPAA compliant. I know that during COVID, we stretched the rules on this a little bit. And that was sort of out of necessity, where suddenly we were doing these virtual visits and were they over Zoom, and we'd have to tell patients that they were not HIPAA compliant. And then maybe they went to Teams and they were HIPAA compliant because they were more secure. But if you got in a habit during pandemic times of directly texting patients or of calling them from non-secure means of communication, just take a look at the way that you're communicating with patients. I see this a lot. I work in the plastic surgery and aesthetics world, and a lot of injectors are like, if you have a problem day or night, just message me on Instagram. I personally never say that. Instagram is not HIPAA compliant. And then it puts the onus on you as a provider to be constantly available. If you're on vacation and you're not checking your social media and someone has a complication and they say, "I reached out on Tuesday and she didn't get back to me until the following week when she returned to the office and I had some terrible complication." Number 1, it's not compliant. Number 2, it doesn't necessarily get read. It's not the same thing as an answering service who's going to call you and return your call to the patient. So just think about the way that you're communicating with people. And I'm not going to get really down into the details of offering medical advice to strangers on the internet. But if you're going to comment about something or give advice, just make sure that you feel comfortable with that post being screenshotted or shared, that comment being, shared widely, or even if you're messaging someone who asked a question and you're saying like, "Hey, I would get that looked at," or "I would go see dermatology," or "I'm concerned about that being a malignancy," that even a direct message to a specific person isn't really private. Even a text message to a specific person, first of all, it's not secure. And second of all, they could screenshot it and you just are held to a different standard as a medical provider. If someone asks a janitor what they think about a rash, no one expects the janitor to know what to do about that. But as a provider, you are held to a different standard. So if this is a concern of yours, take a look at privacy settings on your platforms. And also, this is more of like sometimes my Facebook time hops make me cringe because I don't know about you, but I got on Facebook, I want to say as like a college freshman. And I think I'm old enough that when I got on Facebook, you had to be in college, like with a college email, like .edu email address to be on Facebook. That is no longer the case. But back then you did have to be a college student. And I got it, I say like 2007, maybe 2008. And at the time, this is really dating me. The Facebook status would say like, what are you thinking? Or what are you up to? And you'd post these Facebook statuses. And I see these time hops of, you know, almost 20 years ago. Um, and I just like want to shake my head and like pat the baby teenage version of me on the head. Like, why would anyone care about these Facebook statuses? But if there are posts in the past that are giving you this feeling that after going through some of this stuff, you're like, I have posted things in the past. You can't really ever take them back, but you could take them down, right? You could set them to private. You could delete them. You could remove some comments. If there's some things that you've said I don't know if I want people to see that, don't do nothing, take them down. And then going forward, kind of think about what is and is not appropriate, what is and is not something that you want to put out there in the world on the internet. PAs, you're dedicated to improving the lives and health of your patients for a brighter future. But what about your future? Who's dedicated to helping you with your financial health so that you can live the future you dream of? Meet Caleb Pepperday, certified financial planner and owner of Advanced Practice Planning. Caleb is the husband of a PAC himself and has seen firsthand the challenges PAs face when it comes to finances. This fueled his mission to ensure that physician assistants get the respect, guidance, and treatment they deserve to build the future they want. Don't risk facing retirement with too little in your accounts or giving up on your dreams for the future, and work with an advisor who understands the unique challenges of being a PA. Gain insights into what your retirement could look like with access to the proper guidance. As a listener of and a featured guest on this podcast, Caleb's made available a free guide to help you prepare for retirement. Check out the link in the show notes to get your free guide and learn more about how advanced practice planning can help secure your financial future. The next section is the section that I'm calling Think Before You Post. I'm going to go through some questions to just think about before you post, before you comment, before you share something online. Press pause and ask yourself a couple of these questions, all these questions for bonus points, to ensure you're staying compliant and that also that you're thinking of your professionalism and your reputation with what you're putting out there on the internet. The first question is, could this identify a patient directly or indirectly? Even without names being shared, could a combination of details like age, condition, location, a picture that you're posting potentially reveal a patient's identity? If the answer is yes, consider how to generalize or make it more anonymous. Is anonymize a word? To make it more generalized and anonymized to further protect the patient's privacy. Question 2, do I have explicit documented consent to share this information? I will say this again. Even if a patient or a family member gave you verbal permission, HIPAA compliance typically requires a documented signed consent, a media release, a release of information for any shared details, including general anecdotes in the past or case specifics. Written consent should specify what can be posted about the patient, if pictures are okay, if not, if certain details are okay, or if not, and where it can be posted. Number 3, could this post be seen as unprofessional or insensitive? Medical professionals hold this respected role in the community, and how we communicate, even in places like the comments or closed groups or specifically messaging, can impact both our credibility and that of our profession. Do your best to avoid derogatory comments, inflammatory comments, any overly personal or pointed responses. Is this something that you would want a potential future employer to see? Is this something that you would want a patient to see? Could this post be seen as unprofessional or insensitive to anyone at all? Number 4, does this post contain identifiable timestamps, locations, or relate to unique events? Dates, times, and settings are enough to breach confidentiality in specific situations. So, super small communities, niche specialties, replacing specific details with broader terms, such as recently, as opposed to saying today, or last week, or last month, or this year, and in a clinical setting, as opposed to like at the hospital, in the office, in this specific operating room with this specific person, to remove unique identifiers. Just try to make it harder for anyone to figure out. And if you're at all concerned, don't post it. Number 5, if this screenshot or post were to be shared widely, how would it reflect on me and my reputation and my practice? So, yes, we get a little bit of comfort from being in a closed group, from being somewhere where you have to be a credentialed provider, where you have to share your NPI to enter, where you have to have a profile that says that you have to have a medical license to get into this space. However, screenshots exist, and even from a closed group could be shared. So before posting or saying something sensitive, ask how it would feel to you and how it would be if it reached patients, employers, or even the licensing board. If there is any potential risk, avoid or rethink sharing that content or posting that comment. Number 6, would I be okay with the subject of this post seeing the post, the photos, and the comments? If your collaborating physician, your most strict administrator, your program director or clinical instructor from when you were in school, even the patient or a family member of the patient saw the post, how would it make them feel? And just think about that. And if you think, oh, they would feel, go ahead, proceed, but just pause and think about it. And number 7, this is less of a question and more of a reminder that honestly, if there is any part of you that is concerned about a comment, a post, a photo, or anything that you are putting out there forward facing to the world on the internet, here's your reminder to pause and reevaluate. The internet has a very long memory. And once you put something out there, even if you delete it, it never truly goes away. Screenshots can live on forever, and the impact that something has on your professional reputation, your relationship with patients, your standing in the community, those things never go away. By integrating these 7 questions into your routine, you'll develop a safer, more compliant approach to online interactions. This approach helps you to contribute positively to the online community while still staying well within the bounds of HIPAA boundaries. So, there you have it, some simple but crucial steps to keep your online presence both professional and HIPAA compliant. Being active on social media can be a fantastic way to network, to share knowledge, to learn from others in the field, to increase visibility for the PA profession. And I am here for all of those things. By following these guidelines and taking a little pause before you post something, you're not just protecting your patients, you're also safeguarding your reputation, your license, and your career. As medical providers, we are held to a higher stature in the community, and the advice, comments, and posts that we make are going to be held to a different standard than others. Think about someone Googling you and finding a specific comment. Check the privacy settings on your account and remember to be mindful about creating content, commenting on things, and just thinking twice before you hit send. Remember that compliance isn't necessarily about completely censoring your online presence. It's about sharing insights and connecting meaningfully with your online community while also respecting the privacy and trust that patients place in you. Think of this as a balance between professional visibility and ethical responsibility to your patients and to your profession and to your practice. Yes, we want to be seen and we want that to be in a positive light. Also, we want to maintain our professionalism even on the internet. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't have any fun on the internet, but just make sure you're being safe and HIPAA compliant while you do it. Thank you for joining us for this important topic. I know that HIPAA is not the sexiest topic to talk about, but I also know that you only get one license and one reputation. I hope that you stay safe and stay compliant and as always, stay inspired. That's all for today. This PA is out. Congratulations, you've just joined an awesome club. By listening to a full episode of The PA is In, you are officially on the Unicorn PA team. Welcome aboard. What most team members do is they subscribe to the podcast because that allows them to automatically get the latest episode of the show. The life of your dreams exists on the other side of taking action. Keep making small shifts and keep getting better. Your life will improve, your career will soar, and you will have the confidence you need to create your own success. I will see you in the next episode. This PA is out.